It's the Friendly Fire Show, episode 171 for the midpoint of May 2021. I am one of your hosts, Steve from Stevivor.
I'm Ben from Stevivor, and we're back with games having been played.
Yes, kind of. Yes, like not even kind of. I don't know why I said kind of. It's been a week, Ben. I'm very tired. How are you feeling and doing and being?
Well, I'm all good. So I haven't been playing anything for review. I haven't been smashing out anything. I've been playing one of the new releases this week at a very leisurely pace. I barely played any at all. You've probably finished it about 8 times by now.
3, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 times. Yes. Ooh. Yeah.
8 for number 8.
Ooh, but it's not 8, it's Village. We might as well just get straight into it. You've been playing Resident Evil Village, and I've played a lot more of it from the sound of it. But what do you think of it? And this is spoiler free. I think eventually you and I will talk spoilers. What I want to also do is, it's hard to line up. I've got a friend named Jeremy Pryor who I met online when Resident Evil 7 was first announced at E3, and that's the year that I wasn't there. I was at home. And that's also the year that like the demo was released like instantaneously at the announcement. So I got to like download it and jump on it, as opposed to like all the video game journalists who were out at E3. So I got to like play it, record it, talk about it. And Jeremy is he works in video games. He is also just like a diehard Resident Evil fan. So we became fast friends because we were like just like brute forcing the demo, trying to like learn all the stuff we can and like figure out all the puzzles and stuff. He's the best. So I want to get him on. I also want to get Alex Aniel, who is the writer of Itchy Tasty, A History of Resident Evil, who is a CVX freak who's written stuff for Stevivor. He was on one of the podcast recordings. He's like the best. So they're like super diehard fans. So am I. I feel like, and I don't know if this is the case, they will be more favorable of Village than I will be when we talk about like full-blown spoilers and connections to the overarching lore, etc. And that's my thought. Was that a coherent final finished thought, or did I just trail off into blabbering?
Well, you did your usual trail off, but I get what you're saying. I think that'll be a lot more comprehensive than what we can talk about now, going no spoilers. I have not even close to finishing, and I played maybe 2 hours. Now, it's following Resident Evil 7, but that's not my most recent game. Since 7, I played 2 and 3, the remakes, for the first time. I'd never played those. So now I played all the main series games. I couldn't get into, I think we talked about this at the time. I could not get into Resident Evil 2 and 3 because they were so outdated at the time. Because I got into Resident Evil with 4. And so then going back to like...
Because you're young.
Not that young, Steve. I've got 2 days left of being in my 20s. So
neither of I are that young, but at the time of release, you were younger than I. Anyway, yes, sorry. So you started with 4, as like probably most people in today's day and age did.
Right. So that's still my preferred Resident Evil style. I did like 7. I'm not sold on the first person. There's been so many memes about how Ethan Winter's hands just get mangled constantly, and that's basically what this game is. So we can't spoil anything there. Basically, anything that you could think could happen to a hand happens in this game in a bad way, in like a horror movie way, in a dismembering, getting hacked up type of way. Everything possible happens here. And then he just pours some water on and it's fine.
So randomly he's married. So the wedding finger on his left hand just miraculously is devoid of any problems because the wedding finger needs to stay on to remind you that he's married. And that's like the entire crux of his struggle. Like he has this child and he has to save his child. It's very much in the same vein of saving the president's daughter, though in this instance, you are directly related to the young female, useless, can't look after themselves person. So spoiler free, there are 4 lords. How many lords have you met directly? Because I guess there's a cutscene where you kind of like see all of them, but you don't know who they are. Are you still at Castle Dimitrescu?
Yes, I'm still in there. It's because it's like no more daylight savings, it's dark at nighttime. I can only play for like 20 minutes a night. I think it's quite, they've dialed it back from 7, the jump scares, but it's still kind of a freaky game because constantly, yeah, they're keeping you on edge. And I don't know, I suppose 2 and 3 both had the you're being followed, and at any moment, boom, something can happen to you. Dialed way back for Nemesis in 3. But they've definitely kept an element of that here. And I was kind of hoping that wouldn't be here because, like, I've just had 2 games of that. It's like, another big giant creatures chasing me down the
This
hallways.
might make it easier for you. And this, I don't
Mm,
feel like this is a spoiler. After Castle Dimitrescu, that because I get really anxious about that in video games as well. I don't even like playing Sonic, to be honest, when like Tails is following me. I just don't like being followed. Um,
or
After
it's
Castle
just the
Dimitrescu, it
yeah.
stops. Like, so
Okay.
you don't have that like ever present sense of like, oh,
Well, that's good
Jesus.
because there's a puzzle which I'm not that far from where you have to find like 4 statue heads. The
Yeah.
puzzles are really good, and every time you find one, you're being followed in like the way that you need to go. You can't go, so you've got to go a different way, or you just get your hands hacked up again. Uh, and it's like the first time I was like, okay, I should have seen that coming. The second time I was like, again, really, and the third time just like, yeah, come on. So I'm not keen on that mechanic just because we've had 2 games where that's the main thing. And I was like, going to first person is meant to be this is a different type of Resident Evil, and that main hook is very similar to that. So I'm glad it's going away soon.
And the weird thing about this game is that it's so Luke wrote a review, which I completely 100% agree with. We gave it a 6.5, and a 6.5 on our scale is like, it's all right. It's missing a couple things. But if you're like a fan of the franchise or a fan of the genre, you're going to love it. And that's like the case. Like Luke was like, and everything he said, I completely agree with. The
Mm,
story is batshit stupid. The characters are 2 dimensional, if not 1 dimensional, and just like stupid. But like there are all these amazing set pieces and game design mechanics and puzzles that like are amazing, but they don't make sense kind of like as a coherent whole. And if I'm being honest,
yeah.
I love Resident Evil. That's Resident Evil 4 to an extent. Like it's amazing. The gameplay is excellent. The story goes insanely stupid. There's like a little dude in a castle for no reason. You go to an island and then there's like army people. Like, what's going on? Ada's there, and like Wesker's like it's as a game, just playing in the moment, it's really, really good. When you think about it as a whole, it starts to like just there are giant holes. And if you're a Resident Evil player, you'll sort of kind of see where the design falters and just kind of get to where they want you to be. Whereas if you're not traditionally a Resident Evil fan, you might do what Luke did and just like get stuck in a place for 2 hours because you were doing what you were supposed to do, but you weren't actually
Mm,
supposed to survive. You were supposed to just kind of get to a point where like the cutscene kicks in.
yeah.
You need to
I do
talk
agree with
because I left my wine on the like banister and the cat's about to knock it over. So you say
okay.
I'll turn up the
Go get
volume and
it.
I'll hear you and I'll just come back.
Go get it. I do agree with what Luke said in his review. He pretty much noted that um, it's not what you expect. Like he said, he could read the scene before it happened, and he was. I think it was pretty much what you just said. Then he was annoyed that he knew what the game wanted him to do, and it's not what the gameplay gelled with. So there's a bit of a disconnect between the gameplay and the story, and it kind of forgets that it's a survival horror game in the fact that the early Resident Evil games are very much you need to conserve your resources, know when to use them, don't waste them. Here, there's some points where you're like, am I wasting all of them because I can't win here and I'm meant to get mangled and lose half a hand again? Uh, and then there's the other times where you're like, actually, is this a thing I can really kill? And it's not that clear. And I still haven't found out when. And I think that's something you can't have in survival horror. I think you can have it in horror, but you can't, if you're going to have survival as well and you're going to have scarce resources, you can't not let the player know when things are already pre-scripted and when they can actually use them to be beneficial. So I think it falls down there, but I do think the puzzles so far have been really good. So yeah, it's
Oh
not,
yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, pros and cons. I think it's got some of it really good, some of it, and Resident Evil's had this problem the whole time. It's tried to evolve beyond survival horror. And since I think 4 it did, and it did it well. And since then, it's went too action heavy, and then it's tried to come back to survival, but it's hasn't got it ever again the same way. So It's just something they've always struggled with.
I honestly think that so Resident Evil 7 was written by I don't know the person's name, and I wish I did. It's a Western based writer. He wrote Fear, like F.E.A.R, the creepy shooter, and like Evelyn in Resident Evil 7 is basically like the antagonist in Fear. 7 was not perfect by any stretch, especially like near the end when you get onto the boat. Like, and that seems to be a failure with Resident Evil across the entire franchise. Like as soon as you get kind of to the end game, it just kind of goes like, we don't know what here, just we'll throw this at you and we'll figure out how it ends. Just like big blob at the end. That's guaranteed, but here's some weird thing in the middle. 7 is far superior to Village as an overall product, in my opinion. Where 4 was great, but had some problems. 5 was starting to get too actiony. 6 was everything in the kitchen sink, which almost like failed the franchise in the end. And I feel bad that I was like so on board with the franchise that I went, yes, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then looking at it years later, I went, I can't believe I defended this in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. 7 is great. The first person transition, I think, was needed at the time because it's very immersive. It made you identify, Ethan's that weird character who like you're supposed to empathize with, but really he's just like an empty shell, like the Master Chief in a Halo game. Like he doesn't have a personality. You are the personality. You fill that void. But you still were immersed. And in 8, I don't know, like it doesn't work. It's definitely not the same writer. I feel like the Japanese team just kind of like took it on and just went like, what's the weirdest stuff we can think of, and we'll just kind of make it make sense. So there's not an overarching narrative that makes sense. The ending is ridiculous, and I won't talk about the ending, but I'd like to at some point with you. It's just like mind-blowingly stupid.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting
but
there.
I still like it, and I've still played it 8 times. So take from that what you will.
I don't think I'll put a lot of people off. Like, as you said, Resident Evil 4 was ridiculous when you looked at the story in isolation, but just the setting, the mood, for the time, the gameplay was all great, and it was different to previous Resident Evil, which is also why people like 7, because in hindsight, maybe it's not as good as we thought at launch, but it was just so different. It was a different way of doing it. And then so Village comes along, and it's not really different. It's very similar to 7 with some kind of tones and atmospheres of 4. And you probably see those shortcomings more clearly now because it doesn't have that we've done something different and we've done it well, allure that 7 had. So that's probably why. But people are willing to overlook those things in Resident Evil for the most part.
Yeah, and like the nature of this with Mercenaries especially, which is something that you unlock after you finish the game, and just like the achievements and the way that the challenges are set up, it wants you to replay over and over and over. And Luke's criticism is valid to begin with, but Luke's criticism becomes even more apparent as you play a second time or a third time, and you know exactly when you can just bypass this thing entirely, or like that's not a threat anymore because the scary thing. Oh, sorry, there's one more time after Castle Dimitrescu that something scary chases you, but like you can. It's not that bad. It's more like it's like also like this is basically Resident Evil 7 mapped out as Resident Evil Village. So like there's a sequence that's like the Lucas sequence in Village, and that's like that's the kind of thing chasing you thing. You'll pick it out immediately when it happens. What was I saying about that? I had a point and then I got sidetracked. Oh, that thing that's chasing you in that new sequence, like a second or third time, kind of like with Mr. X when you like go into a safe room and you can just see him to stop and be like, oh, my scripting says no longer move because I cannot follow you there. You know when that happens almost immediately when you play it a second time. So then it no longer is effective.
It loses the
yeah. So and that's a downside, but it wants you to play it like multiple times, and like the second or third time you're just like, oh, whatever, like this will take me 20 minutes to just finish this entire thing that took me like 2 hours last time because I was going through every nook and cranny and trying to figure it out, which is good and bad, I guess. I don't know. I can't wait to talk about this more, but we will not ruin anyone's experience.
We'll return from what I've said. Future episode. No, I don't think so.
Cool. So something that if we ruin this for you at this point, you're stupid, and I don't even like like have any empathy for you. Mass Effect Legendary Edition. We're recording this on Thursday night, and the embargo goes up Thursday at 10. So this is my excuse to not put up the podcast until Friday.
Give me the scoop on this 3 games that came out years ago.
After we're done recording, I have to actually go and like finish the review. But it is a remastered version of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, which were all Xbox 360 era titles. The first one was literally just Xbox 360, and then it branched out into other platforms. Or was Mass Effect on PC originally? I can't remember. That's bad. It was definitely a 360 game.
First. Yeah.
It was like a Microsoft Game Studios on Mass Effect, and then BioWare did it with EA, and probably became a part of EA at some point between Mass Effect 1 and 2, and obviously did 3. It's up to 4K on consoles, up to 120 frames on consoles, a little bit higher, obviously, depending on your PC status. But most of the work went into Mass Effect 1 because it's the oldest game. It's kind of the clunkiest game. So a lot of the yeah, and a lot of the refinements from 2 and 3 kind of just like went back into 1. BioWare is using Unreal Engine 3, which was the original engine, still with the Legendary Edition. So it's not so much like kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, but just kind of like making it the most current. I guess like at a balancing of cost and effort involved. So it's like Mass Effect, when you play the 360 version, and we're going to put up a video that kind of compares the 360 version on Xbox Series X, because I couldn't be bothered recording on my 360 and changing all the cables, compared to like, I guess it's technically the Xbox One version of Legendary Edition, but also played on Xbox Series X. I don't remember Mass Effect looking so bad when I replayed it in February, like via 360, but like playing Legendary Edition and then going back to the 360 version of Mass Effect, it's absolutely night and day. It's just like muddy and gross on the 360, and it looks current on Legendary Edition. There's a lot of gameplay mechanics that aren't current, but that's kind of like how it all works. It's in the Resident Evil vein. If we're talking about playing like Resident Evil 4 on 360 or Xbox One, there's that nasty thing where like you're used to playing video games at this point. So like you're running with Leon and you're using the left stick to kind of drive him, but then you're like using your right thumbstick to like also drive him. But that's not possible in Resident Evil 4. Like that you only have one stick. The right stick does nothing, and like it's very confusing to your brain because video games have evolved so much since then. It's not that bad, but it's still bad. Mass Effect 1 has like a cooldown system for weapons. So you'd shoot, and there's like a little bar that shows you when you like overheat, and then you just can't shoot until that completes itself. But I'm in the mindset, especially after Resident Evil Village, where like you shoot some things, you have a gap in time, you just like mash the reload button so you have enough bullets to be ready for the next thing you need to shoot. And the X button on Xbox is throw a grenade. So I just like wantonly uselessly throw grenades in Mass Effect because I just am so muscle memory.
That shouldn't be allowed. You should not let it have like the standard reload, standard crouch. Every game uses those. Very annoying when a game also makes left bumper run. Of course, with the Xbox Elite controller, you could always remap everything and put it as a profile, but that's time.
Well, A is run, which wasn't possible in Mass Effect before now. So this is a 2 and 3 thing that's now been put back into 1. So that like at least you get to sprint, and that does change how combat works. But then left stick clicking down, if you're not using paddles, Ben, because I know you use paddles to sprint sometimes. Left click is crouch. So I keep like going to run, but also crouching at the same time, just because of like how my brain is wired. So I don't run, and I just crouch. So I just look stupid. The reload thing comes back into play in Mass Effect 2 and 3. So like it's just, you have to get your brain around some of the controls. It's not as bad as I guess I'm making it out to be. It's just you have to think about it. And it's good. Like I've spent a couple hours on each game trying to get a handle of it in the 2 days lead time before the review comes out. But honestly, I've spent most of my time just playing Mass Effect 1 because I started playing it and I just immediately got sucked back in. And the characters are so good, and the narrative is so good, and the writing is so good, and the relationships are so good. I can't just take myself out and play the other ones. Like I want to already be in this giant 3-story 100-hour narrative arc. It looks better. It's like $100. It's pretty reasonably priced to get that much game time out of it. I could, for what it is, it maybe could be a little bit cheaper, but it's EA, so I don't know. That I just kind of assume that that's what they're going to do. Yeah. I really like it. I can't wait to finish Mass Effect 1. I can't wait to roll that character into 2 and into 3. Something that I struggled with 3 is that the ending was sort of like, and they didn't necessarily completely fix it, but they made a lot of efforts to try to like please the fan base. And I just didn't have a bar of any of that because I'm like, I believe in the indoctrination theory. You said that that's not true, but that was like a great reading. Like, I'm just like, that's where my Mass Effect 3 story ends. Never again. And I only played the DLC back in February of this year because I'm like, let me get reacquainted with Mass Effect for when it comes out. Some of the DLC, especially Citadel, is so very, very good. And it's not like an after the fact addition once you finish the story. It's like woven into the game proper, which is just like a nice middle bit to the story that eventually pads out with the extended cut. So like it'll be a better experience if you play it again. It'll be a much better experience if you just play it for the first time. If you're completely new to it, just be patient. But see how you go. Like my husband started with Mass Effect 2. He skipped Mass Effect because it was too clunky for him. I started with Mass Effect. I loved it. Like Marina Sirtis is in it. She's one of the bad guys in it. Like it's like Star Trek, but without being Star Trek. It's like right up my alley. I love it. So if you like Mass Effect, you will like this and you will get sucked back in, I think. Yeah. Sorry, Ben. I've just been talking and talking and talking.
I assume they're going for people who haven't played primarily because, or people like you who are big fans and were fans from the beginning, not jumping in halfway through, which a lot of people did. I think I did. I think I played 2 and then I went back to 1, but I never really got into it because it was too old, because it would have been like 2013 at that time. It's just like, yeah, this sucks. And then for some reason,
I'm old. There you go. Sorry.
So they're probably going for more new people, but then on the other hand, like these games have all been on Game Pass for ages. Like you could have played them. Well, actually, they've been on Game Pass for a few months, but they've been in EA Play for ages. Plenty of time to play them. They're dirt cheap, and that's the only thing with these remasters. I'm glad that they do look better when you compare them. But like when you can get all 3 original games for like $10 total versus now 100 for the new remaster, it is a hard sell.
Well, so 1 and 3 are on Game Pass because I was recording the openings to.
Oh, is 2 not?
Well, 2 is like just conveniently not working right now. So I bought it because I'm like, I've made a recording for 1 and for 3. I'm just gonna like whatever. I'll just pay for it. I'll just get it. It's $30 still on.
Oh, really?
Xbox. Yeah. So I spent $30
to sale.
I spent $30 to record a 5-minute like opening clip so I could compare it to the Legendary Edition. But whatever. That's taxable. We'll get into tax later.
Because I bought all of these when they're on sale. When they went backwards compatible, I bought them all, and they were like $6 each.
Well, I had the discs, so I didn't think about it, and then I got all the achievements in most of these 3 games like then and there. Anyway,
I bet you they put the price up, or they like made sure it wasn't on sale this week, so that they could say, "Oh, it's $90 for 3 old ones, or $100 for a good one." Yeah.
So if you are achievement or trophy hunting, the one thing I can say is that the achievement and trophy lists are so much more forgiving of your time than the original set. Like as the best example, the original Mass Effect, you have 6 supporting characters like Tali, Garrus, Rex, etc. And in the original games, you had to literally go through the entire game, main quests, most of the side quests, like most of the unexplored planets to get like, I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but like we'll say 67 of 74 possible missions. And the only way to get the achievements to like finish, get the loyalty of Tali or Garrus was to finish 60 plus missions out of 70 something with those 2 characters, then restart the game and play it at least 2 more times with two other combinations of people to get those for like 15 gamer score or something ridiculous. And in the remaster, it's like finish 5 missions with each person. So by the time you leave the Citadel, you could get like 2 of those 6 achievements straight off the bat and just like have fun playing, because then you can just play through once, get most of the achievements and not feel too bad about like missing like maybe a difficulty based one or something, and like roll into 2 and then roll into 3, which I think is phenomenal. Like if you had to match the original set, you'd be playing this for like 400 hours, not 100 hours. And while that's like good, I guess if you're like a diehard fan, that's way too much of a time commitment, even in a time when we don't have that many games to play.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's come out at a good time in the sense that if you're ever going to play 3 massive RPGs like this, probably a good time. That we don't know when the next big game's coming out, really, at least multi-platform. So, but on the other hand, if you already played them, it's hard to go back and commit to that much time.
I thought so, but once you start, man,
yeah.
I got sucked back in so hard. And like
We'll
Matt's
see.
the same. He skipped out. He skipped past 1, but like as soon as he got home, he's like, "You have a podcast, right?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." I'm like an hour and a half. He's like, "Yeah, I'm playing Mass Effect. I'll see you tomorrow." I'm like, okay, cool. And he skipped 1 because he thought 1 was too clunky. 2 and 3 are like, for the most part, still modern.
Yeah,
to the point where like it's not as noticeable. And if you don't want to play 1, you can just like play the Genesis comic, which gives you the backstory of 1 and also like lets you pick the key points. So like, who did you sacrifice, this person, or did this happen? Did you befriend this guy, or did you like make an enemy of this? And you can do the same thing in 3 if you want to, for some reason, skip 1 and 2, which makes no sense to buy Legendary Edition and play one of the 3 games, but you still could do that. So it's good. Like it's catering to a lot of people depending on how you approach it, I think.
Yeah, but it is missing a small amount of DLC, right? Because they lost the source code or
one
something.
DLC called Pinnacle Station, because like you said, it was lost.
Which I think it probably just puts the spotlight on preserving that stuff. I'm sure it's not a big deal.
It wasn't that good, and you can still if you really want to play it, you can play it on Xbox 360 back and pat.
Yeah,
but they lost it on PlayStation and stuff, so they didn't release it on this because it would be like the same kind of thing, like an incomplete. We have the code here, but we don't have the code here. I don't know why they couldn't. I guess it was a cost thing. Like they didn't want to have to recreate it for other platforms because it would defeat the purpose of making all this money on this cash-in, which like it is, I guess, really. And it's to show you that Mass Effect is a thing and to get you hyped for like the continuation of this trilogy or whatever is going to happen in that kind of announced Mass Effect game, which we know nothing about. I would posit that if you really, really liked playing through the Legendary Edition, once you get through it, go back and play Andromeda. If you haven't, especially because despite all the shit it got, it is a very, very good game. And I played through it and had no problems. I've recommended it to people over the pandemic who've played it, and they're like, "Yep, man, it was great. I don't know what's happened." Like it's probably some of the case that like the bugs that people were encountering, like in Assassin's Creed Unity, have been kind of fixed in the interim. But I like the story, I like the characters, I like the setting. So if you love Legendary Edition, go check out Andromeda. It's pretty cheap, and that'll tide you over until whatever new Mass Effect comes out, whenever it comes out.
Years away, I would have thought. Anyway,
yeah, I think so too.
What else has been happening?
I like Canadian studios doing awesome things, and yes, this is just like a remaster of a game, but go BioWare Edmonton. And we're back. Ben, I've played 2 things, you played 1 thing. Let's get into some news. Let's start off with yearly shooter-based wartime things. I'll let you take it away because I'm sick of talking.
There's scandals aplenty this year, Steve, on the Call of Duty train, because we don't know what's going on. And there's been so many rumors earlier in the year. As you may remember, last year was meant to be Sledgehammer Games' year. So we rotate Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer. They were meant to be last year. They were up. They were on the podium, and then got kicked off for Treyarch to come back and bring Black Ops Cold War, which was a very good game. Raven actually made the campaign, and I think they originally made it and pitched it, and it wasn't a Call of Duty, and they just made it into one last minute because Sledgehammer were not ready with their Call of Duty. It's meant to be a follow-up to 2017. They went back to World War II. very good game. Supposedly, we're getting a follow up to that. And then earlier this year, the rumors came back saying they're still not ready, like they're having all sorts of problems. And this might be the first year ever, well, not the first year, but the first year since 2005, maybe, where there's not a new annual Call of Duty game, which would be a pretty big deal. Activision has been very quick to let their investors know that's not the case. There will be a new game. But rumors persist that there's development problems and we might not get a full new game. So we might get the campaign that they made for World War II. Apparently that works well. It'll somehow link into Warzone. And then they might just release Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the original Modern Warfare 2, not the future sequel that will also be called Modern Warfare 2.
God, yeah.
Multiplayer remastered. So in 2019, they released that, the campaign only remastered for last gen platforms, playable backward, forward compatibly, and backwards compatibly, depending, you can play it on either platform, either generation, it's fine. But so campaign only, there was no multiplayer. They released it for like $30. The rumor is they're now going to release that multiplayer as this year's COD multiplayer because whatever Sledgehammer is doing is not working. Whether that's true, we'll probably find out soon. They normally would have announced it now. But, you know, at COVID times, they might be waiting a little bit longer. And that brings us to Battlefield, which is definitely coming this year. Battlefield 6. I think we'll get that in the E3 time frame. EA Play, EA Live. What do they call their thing these days?
Kind of. So they're announcing it in June. And the day after, they kind of made this tease about Battlefield being announced in June. EA said, EA Play 2021, our live stream is going to be in July. So it's like, oh, like we'll definitely see more of Battlefield in July, but we're going to get a pre-E3 Play taste of it we must in June. Like Battlefield wouldn't say words that rhyme with June, soon, and boom if they're not going to do anything in June. So
well, it's a big year for them because I liked Battlefield 1 and 5. A lot of hardcore Battlefield people didn't because they thought it simplified it too much. But I thought it was a lot more accessible than some of the really old games. I really enjoyed them both. It was a lot more big scale. COD then tried to copy that recently with their bigger scale with vehicles, and that's garbage. So that's Battlefield's thing. That's what it does well. And I liked where 1 was really slow. So like it took time to actually slow down to that World War I, very slow loading pace. 5, which was back in World War II, kind of felt speedier by comparison. I presume they're going to go back to Modern Warfare here, but don't know. But it's a big year. Like they might not have, for the only time ever, not a proper COD to go up against. So like they should dominate. They need to make sure they do a good job. They can't just pander to that original audience and go hardcore again because this is the time to get that COD audience onto Battlefield. So I think they need to kind of keep it how it was. I think it was a good balance. I'm looking forward to see what they do because this is a big chance for DICE.
I have so many thoughts. The first is this kind of feels like on the Call of Duty side, and I forget which one it is, and you can tell me, like the Call of Duty that came out a couple of years ago that was just multiplayer. We don't have a single player campaign. We stuffed it. Yeah, so like the same idea, but like kind of flipped away.
Yeah.
But they don't need to worry so much about, and this will come into another news story in a second. They don't have to worry so much about like the next Call of Duty because they are, I would believe, so reliant upon Warzone, which is the free-to-play version of Call of Duty, just kind of like sucking up all of the air in the room. So like Activision, Treyarch, Infinity Ward, whichever, Sledgehammer, it doesn't matter so much because of how they've positioned Call of Duty, whereas Battlefield needs to do something and probably needs to do something free to play.
But then they compete with...
like how do you it's like there's so many thoughts here, like, and we'll get into like Ubisoft's take on it too, which kind of factors in.
But if Battlefield goes free to play, then their direct competitor is basically Apex, which is also EA. Like, so it's that I can see why they haven't done that because
EA has no problem putting Battlefield up against Titanfall, and usually Titanfall gets slaughtered. Unfortunately,
but they were happy to slaughter Titanfall. I don't think they want to slaughter Battlefield. Like Apex would win as the free to play shooter. It's already dominating.
Yeah.
Unless they do a different style. They do a free to play shooter, which is not a battle royale, which would go against the trend. Maybe there is something there. You can do something else. I have to wait and see. But yeah, you're right. Activision isn't as reliant on it, but it sounds like they might be just kind of like, here's like you bought a half a remaster 2 years ago. Here's the other half with a new campaign. $120, please. They probably would try that.
Well, and yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about Battlefield. I really like a Battlefield. I like the single player campaign probably more than a Call of Duty. I think I actually like the multiplayer more than a Call of Duty too. Like it's a very different mindset, but like they usually come out at the same time. So it's like, do you want the kind of like more slow, calculated war game, or do you want like the fast time to kill, blah 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 blah, like Call of Duty has? And it's really kind of like just pick one because you only have enough time to get good at one or the other. So it'll maybe just be nice for us consumers if we don't have to have that challenge this year, which is good.
Now, what's Ubisoft doing? You mentioned them.
Well, yeah, something that might try to drain your time is that Ubisoft is making a priority to free-to-play titles as opposed to like the AAA blockbuster games. And as a really good example of this, they recently announced the Division Heartland, which is a free-to-play game coming to like all the major platforms, which is a spin-off of the Division and the Division 2, but it's one of these games where you don't have to play or pay to start, but obviously there will be paywalls or like some sort of microtransaction system that will encourage you to like spend up so you can get the most out of your enjoyment. Because as we've seen from like recent financial reports from like EA, I think I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but they made like a fraction of their revenue from game sales and made a majority of their revenue from things like FIFA, Ultimate Team, and then like correspondingly Madden Ultimate Team and hockey NHL Ultimate Team and Apex Legends, where you don't have to pay to get in, but you have to pay to unlock characters or whatever else. So Ubisoft has said that they're not dropping things like Rainbow Six Parasite, which was Rainbow Six Quarantine, which might be Rainbow Six something else, or like Far Cry 6. But like personally, it's terrifying because it just feels like the mobile kind of mindset of like, we'll get you hooked and then we'll just try to nickel and dime you is like kind of becoming the prevalent way of how this industry thinks it can behave. And I can't imagine that there won't be regulation.
Well, it's happened. You know, a lot of European countries ban loot boxes with games. It's that crippled a lot of EA games last generation or one before potentially, when it was just constantly that microtransaction rammed down your throat. And it was probably the reviewers constantly bringing it up, being like, this game's ruined by microtransactions. Like a lot of people say price or whatever shouldn't come into a game review. I disagree. I don't think it should be a major factor, but it definitely should be a component because like things like that, you know, reviewers ignore it. But if it's a huge part of the game and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to make their money, it impacts it.
I'm relatively certain I didn't really think price counted in like years, like 10 years ago, probably, Ben. I'm old, you're getting old. You're not as old, but you're getting there. I think it was you that said to me, well, that's easy for you to say when you're getting a game free and you're like trying to just be like, oh, it's good, I like it. But like if it's like $120 re-release of a game that used to be like $60 20 years ago, like why? Like, oh, that makes absolute perfect sense. Like you're putting your hard-earned money into games. And now I guess there's going to be games where you like, do you spend $100 or 120 or whatever it's going to be at the point of purchase and like mostly own most of the content? Because even some of those games like NBA 2K is like the best example of like you pay up front and then they also want you to just continually pay. Or do you not pay anything and then just like over like each week maybe drop like $5-10 for years and years and years, and then if you add up the amount of money that you spent on this game, you'd probably like choke and vomit. Like it's concerning.
Well, and the value does have a big factor to play when you're buying stuff, and what you are willing to spend on something determines what you value kind of getting out of it. In the same way that you go spend $5,000 on a shitty Corolla, and that's good money well spent. But if it had the price tag of a Tesla and it costs $80,000, you'd think this is a poorly priced car. So absolutely it matters. But anyway, we're going off topic here. That's probably more to do with Mass Effect than well, it's all related. It's all related.
Back on topic, the federal government of Australia has announced a new tax offset for developers to try to offset the cost of making games to try to encourage more people to make games within the country. And it's tied in for a number of reasons, and I can't remember all the numbers, so I've literally just pulled up the story over in that corner, so I can basically just read it out as I'm talking. The government will introduce a 30% refundable tax offset for eligible businesses that spend a minimum of $500,000 on qualifying like development. So one, like you have to be big enough where you could drop $500,000 to make a game.
Yeah,
so that's a hurdle.
Not your two-man indie. It's they're going for well, not really a AAA game. That's still way below that, but they're going for a decent sized studio.
But one of the asterisks on this is that they're going to crack down on, you can't have these type of like gambling-esque loot box style mechanics built into your game, because then you're kind of like dipping into the tax offset, and you're also just like relying upon all this like post-game income coming in, which I applaud. It's like I'm glad I don't have to worry about figuring out how that works. I applaud the government for doing that. I don't applaud the government for making this offset like 10, 15 years after it should have. But it's relatively good news for Australians, I guess.
Hopefully it allows more studios to kind of grow and get bigger, because it seems like most of the ones in Australia, you get your odd hit like, Hollow Knight and Crossy Road, and made by small teams. But we haven't had really bigger studios for like 10 years. So yeah. I don't think we'll ever get back to like, Team Bondi, who has 100 staff or whatever it was. But surely we could get smaller teams making decent games.
Or Sledgehammer Melbourne, Australia, which you've talked about Sledgehammer's problems. Who knows what that means? I'm excited to see what happens. Who knows?
It's mandatory to become somewhere which is generally known for making games. You need to have that tax offset. That's why there are so many Montreal developers. There's a few places in Europe that I can't think of the top of my head, same situation. Like there's a reason all these devs pull together in similar places, and it's not because they just love living there. Maybe San Francisco, because you kind of have to. That's the thing to do that. I don't know if they've got any tax offsets or not. But yeah, so you certainly need incentive.
Well, segueing into nothing. Talking about Australia some more, and I know nothing about this, so this is all yours. The AFL Evolution 2 Season Pack 2021 came out, Ben, and I know nothing about this, so it's all yours. Take it away.
Well, you're pretty much just playing the whole thing. So there was a new AFL game last year, better than the original one. I actually couldn't remember what I said in my review. I had to reread it to remember if this game was any good or not. Turns out, based on what I said, it is better. It's still riddled with problems. And basically, because this is made by such a small team and it sells in such a small market, they cannot, I assume, pay for an update. Like they need to sell you $15 DLC to update the teams and such. And, I think fair enough. Basically, like there is some degree of work. They've made some players look more realistic. They've added one new stadium, some new Guernseys. That's basically it. And the new squads. If you're still playing this game, you would probably pay that. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's still paying it. There was one new feature, which is basically like Match Center, where you can go. They've tried to copy FIFA, but they struggle with such a small team. But you can look at the results for the most recent games and then go in and play them, try to change them. And unfortunately for them, this game launched in April last year. So it was just after the season was postponed indefinitely. And it was like, we've had this one new game mode and we can't use it because there's like no games potentially forever. So when I reviewed it, I didn't even try it because it didn't exist. I have now tried that. It does work. It's exactly what you think it would be, but good on them.
But now there's a lot of Collingwood fans who are like desperately hitting up that mode to try to change real life. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's basically, yeah. And, North Melbourne fans, I think they've won one game in the past 20 or something. So you can go change that in this game.
Can you wear the Port Adelaide prison bar Guernsey?
No, you cannot, but they should definitely add that in. $10 DLC with just an angry look at Eddie Maguire in the background. That'd sell a truckload.
Good. The last news thing I want to talk about before we get into this episode and delays, because that's still a thing, is some new. There's a ton of news coming out of the Apple versus Epic Games, Google versus Epic Games lawsuits going on. But something I thought was the most interesting is that Sony is basically charging developers to enable crossplay in certain circumstances. So in light of all this legal stuff going on, The Verge grabbed some internal release documents that say that Sony will charge developers like Epic Games, as an example, a fee to offset the reduction in revenue, those were quotes, if the amount that the PlayStation Network makes divided by the PlayStation 4 gameplay share for a game is less than 85% for that month. So basically, like if you buy a game on Xbox and you play on PlayStation, no, how does this work? Oh god,
play with PlayStation.
Yeah, there you go. So if more people buy it on Xbox or PC or something, or cross playing with PS4, and Sony doesn't like the percentage, they will charge you like an offset amount to kind of like make up for the fact that someone is playing with a PlayStation person, but they didn't play on PlayStation themselves.
We can see why it took so long for crossplay to become a thing.
Yeah.
I think what we've learned mostly from this whole trial is a lot of massive deals or things being floated are just off the cuff in an email, basically. It's just kind of like, good day, Phil.
Oh yeah, g'day, mate. We want some money.
How about crossplay? Like, that's it. Like, it's minor. Like, one email from Tim Cook, like, got massively around Twitter, was him basically saying, is this the guy that was like our keynote last year? Like, who is this guy? It's like, and this is how business, I'm sure most people relate to these type of emails in their own jobs, but this is still how it's done at like the executive tech level. It's just some emails being forwarded, basically. And that's how these decisions get made. So,
and like paraphrasing a lot, it's like we make enough money that we don't want to do this. Like, why would we? And Epic's like, we'll pay you to do it. And Sony's like, oh, I guess we can make that work, essentially. How do we think about this? And Sony, like, if we're looking back at how crossplay was implemented last generation, it was like Sony being dragged, like kicking and screaming into it. Whereas like people like Microsoft, as an example, who obviously don't have the market share, who aren't in that position of power to be like, we control the world, we're like, yeah, 100% we'll do it. Like anything to get people kind of coming to us. So like, it's not unexpected. It's sad. But it's interesting to see all the stuff coming out of these legal proceedings, where it's basically just a whole bunch of like mega corporations who don't need any more money trying to get a little bit more money, and also trying to like make you as the general everyday person think that they're like looking out for the little guy, where like everybody's just out for making as much money as they possibly can. And like that's how Epic started this all. They wanted more of a cut of their own Fortnite in-game purchases than they'd give to Apple or to Google or to whoever else. So it's like, I don't know, like whoever wins, we all still lose.
Well, one of their pitches was to Sony, you know, we'll make it win-win. We'll make you look good. We'll come out on your stage at E3 and be like, you're doing this to help everyone. And they were still like, nah, we don't want to do that.
We have the market share of consoles. We don't care. We don't need to. The experience is best on PlayStation or something, whatever that line was right before they decided to opt into crossplay. This week in episodes? No, this episode in delays, Ben. That
what
was
are
a
we
coherent
missing?
sentence. Fall Guys on Xbox and Switch has been delayed. The good news is crossplay is basically enabled like as of right now. If you're on PC or PS4 or on PS5, of course, you can crossplay. You can't like do voice comms or anything yet, but that's gonna eventually be sorted out. So that's one of the delays. The second delay is unexpected. It's Ubisoft's Skull and Bones, which I first saw in 2017, Ben.
Yes.
I think I played it in 2017, or if not, like 2018 or 2019.
I think it was announced at like 16. It's just like a trailer. Maybe you played it in 17.
Shane had a hands-on and I had a hands-on. And it's been a number of years since. Anyway, that's now scheduled for a 2022 or 2023 release date. So,
well, I didn't even know it had a date. I thought this was a, you know, in the graveyard, it's actually never going to be released situation. So at least it's still going.
the rumor is that it was completely retooled. It was originally announced, I think, for 2019, and it's just been like bumped up.
You see, at least this segment is going to slowly go away because we now have like basically no release dates for any game, so it can't be delayed unless like things like Battlefield 6 coming this year gets delayed to next year. Unless we get that level of delay.
And that's why, like, if there isn't a Call of Duty this year, like, I think we've seen, like, even in like my best example is Control's Alan Wake DLC. Like, I feel like that DLC would have been so much better if Remedy would have been in a studio making like an Alan Wake expansion in Control to set up this connected universe, and instead they kind of had to do it from home, so they kind of reused this and that and the other and cut a corner here and cut a corner there, but they got it out. So it's like, do you want something good or do you want something now? So if things are delayed, I hope that we all kind of understand that at this point. It still sucks, but that's what it is.
That's why we have no more release dates. Prepare for more remasters, re-releases, and the occasional remake, I would say. That's how things are going to be for a while. I hope you like playing legendary editions of many games. I fully expect that to be the case at E3 this year. E3 Legendary Edition.
Resident Evil Village Legendary Edition coming December 2021 with extra tall vampire ladies. Just 4 of them stalk you, because why not have one when you can have 4 just always in your face? Not that you know what your face looks like because it's first person. Anyway, it looks like your face. That's the whole point. Ben, how do we find you on the internet?
I am Ben_Salter on Twitter, and you, as you go to guzzle some wine.
Sorry, S Wright AU on the internet. Stevivor. If you like this podcast, I think I said it in the mid-roll, if I did the mid-roll properly. Tell a friend, subscribe on like a million platforms, give us a rating on whatever you rate things, whatever. Like we'll still do it anyway. I just like having fun talking with Ben in virtual time. And I'm so excited that, Ben, next weekend I will actually get to see you because as I like to point out, you are old and you're turning 30, and I will be in Adelaide unless something catastrophic happens. Well, I'll be in Adelaide. I'm half vaccinated, so whatever. I'll just like cough on people. What are you gonna do to me?
It'll be like old times.
You're not vaccinated. I won't cough on you. I'll cough on your friends that I don't like. You just point them out. Just like I'll target them. I guess I'm not the person to cough because I'm half vaccinated, but I'll get randoms to cough on people that you don't like. I'll figure it out.
All right, so we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're about to discuss seeing each other in real life, which is very rare these days.
The first time in what, like a year and a half?
Yes.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. And we will have played nothing new. No, we would have played Assassin's Creed Valhalla's DLC. That is out today. As of listening to this, it was out yesterday. And I think that's it. Nothing else comes out in the next 2 weeks.
I may or may not have played an RPG with like an animal that I'm not going to name specifically because I can't remember when the embargo is. But I'm not playing that if the embargo hasn't come up yet.
I completely forgot that was a thing. Okay, there's that.
Good.
And that's going to be it. Ratchet & Clank won't be up by then. That's all that is on my radar.
We're Commander Shepard, and this is our favorite podcast on the Citadel.